All right, it's Tuesday.
Once again.
All day.
I'm thrilled.
Same. Hey, we're Power and Speed, 908-751-0211. And with the little boy voice.
Pleased to be.
No, don't. No. I'm going to hit you with that fucking flashlight. I swear to God, I have no mood for you today.
Pleased to be liking us on the Facebook and the iTunes.
I swear I'm gonna get Alexa in here, and I'm going to get her to answer all your... That's what's going to happen next.
So your car is broke, huh?
I have no clue. I don't know what antifreeze is in there. It's like I said, it looks fine.
But it's rust-colored.
But it's root beer colored.
Well, maybe that's what it is.
Well, let me clarify something. You were saying you were checking the oil in your car.
I looked over my overflow.
And your overflow tank
is brown.
Okay. Did you notice that before it was green? Or is it like a newfangled antifreeze? It seems like they're all different colors.
That's what
now.
I'm trying to find out. You know, what the hell? Okay, this is different.
Is it running badly?
No, runs fine. Oil level is perfect. That's why I just, after you fill up, I, check the, well, I waited till I got home, checked the oil. And I was like, what the? So.
It could just be one of those new decks of faux moco, whatever, universal coolants that they decided to make brown instead of green, yellow, purple. They're all different fucking colors.
But I want to make sure just because, I never noticed that before.
Okay.
And, no mixture in the oil or anything like that. So should be honky-dory, but.
Okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't really make any power or anything, right?
No, but there could be a reason that's not.
But, no, but I mean, you told me that it has just drive around tune in it, right?
Yeah, it's just got a break-in tune, so.
Okay.
It's got a break-in tune.
Word.
Yeah. Maybe it's that orange coolant. There's like orange and red coolant that with some dirt from the block might be looking brown, brownish.
Aluminum dirt? I mean,
dirt.
It's not rust, but.
Just dirt.
Oh, no.
Dirt.
I'll show you when we go outside.
What do you mean aluminum dirt?
Dirt.
It's not rust. It's the freaking aluminum block.
Who said rust? We said dirt.
Dirt don't look like that.
Grime.
Anyway.
How long was that, car sitting?
Different engine.
Different radiator?
Oops.
Just saying, Todd.
There might be animals. There might be blood.
That would be cool.
Might be a little mouse family. Their remnants. Could be.
That was just the exhaust, though.
You don't know where they were.
Well, I hope you get that thing addressed and looked at.
Yeah.
And I realized you just found it, so you really couldn't get any answers. It was strange when you were trying to explain what was going on. I guess Tom got it. I really didn't get it. He was talking about brown and checking oil, but he's talking about antifreeze. So you might be understanding Todd a little better than I am now.
That's a little scary.
It might be a little scary.
I know.
Next thing you'll be relating to FUD.
You mean FUD going
Nobody can do that.
You mean FUD going out to dinner tonight?
Negative. Let me think about my answer. No.
All right, so car stuff from anybody? Anybody do anything cool?
Yeah, I actually talked to a couple guys about putting either a turbo or a supercharger on my Durango.
Oh, did you?
And one of those was actually Mr. Banish, correct?
Yeah.
And he had some useful insights?
Always. Yeah, he's a smart guy.
And he actually said supercharger?
Yeah, he said, the way that thing is calibrated and the way the ECU
Well, let's
works.
back up. That thing's a Durango, what, 3.6 or 7 or whatever the fuck. They get all kinds of...
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so Magnuson makes a supercharger, Edelbrock. There's a place called RIP that has they use a Powerdyne head unit. It's a centrifugal. They actually make good power.
Isn't that what Adam has on his?
Yeah, Adam.
Yeah.
Adam works for him.
Right.
Yeah. They make like 450 wheel
Okay.
with these things and drive around normal, that'd be fun power.
Oh, yeah.
So, but yeah, Greg said the ECU and the way they cal them at the factory, it's really, really complicated.
Yeah, now if he says it's complicated,
yeah,
that's got to say something.
Yeah, it's complicated to him. It's it's plaid to us.
Well, that's a dual overhead cam.
Yeah.
So it's got 4 phasers.
Yeah.
So you got shit moving all over
the place. Yeah.
And I wonder, I kind of got sort of a vague idea how the GM does the different volumetrics because they have like cam positions and then it changes like the graph. But I mean, I wonder what you do when you've got all those variables and moving all over.
You lock them.
That really sounds like a
mass graphs.
Well, unless you have the time, the years to put into it to get it to drive like they get it to drive and to do everything else. And, Greg is a stickler for, the thing passing emissions, which he's right, 100%.
Well, I would think that probably part of cam position would be to make it a little more efficient and a little cleaner.
Sure.
We'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah. Efficient, cleaner, nice to drive, all that stuff. I mean, yeah, you could tune it and get it to work and get it to, work part throttle and driving down the highway, but all the little stuff with a turbo would be really tough.
A lot of maps.
Yeah. So he said, man, they've got actually he knows one of the guys that calibrates for Magnuson because he used to work for the guy who I guess works for Greg, and he did the cals in a lot of the Hemi stuff or something, I don't know. But he knew the guy, and he said the guy's pretty sharp, and I'm sure he said he's sure the calibrations.
Well, when you buy those things, like a bolt-on kit, they actually give you,
they give you a handheld with a map,
right?
Or
so
a couple maps or whatever
to get you, hopefully real close if it's an all factory.
No, they get you to drive. Yeah. It's drivable.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done all the work, and they assume that if you're all factory, you're good to go.
Okay.
Plus, with that thing, you bolt it on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fab, and
I'd want to go with like a mag type blower. I don't know if I'd want a belt driven turbo. That's just me.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking, the ATI, Vortec, any of those people, but I just, I don't know.
I kind of agree with that, but by the same token, you could put a way bigger intercooler on the front of it than,
Not hot air?
Yeah, and air. Yeah, no. You go in air to air. But Greg said that if you add to the capacity of whatever, roots type supercharger you put on it, or whatever type they are, whatever positive displacement blower you put on it, they get really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably direct.
Well, that thing, it would have an air to water, and as long as you have enough room, and it's a truck, and I know your truck is actually, there's a ton of room in front of the motor, but on the sides of the thing and like getting past it, that's pretty packed in. But as long as you had someplace, the larger of a tank you put, the more cooling capacity you have.
Yeah.
I think that.
Plus, we could slow the water down.
Oh, we could talk right about that. I'm going to get into that.
I know.
But about the only interesting car thing I had is my uncle. He was a plumber his whole life.
Oh, broke Uncle Billy?
Broke Uncle Billy. Broke Uncle Billy shows up with, like a brand new Wilson Combat. Couple different firearms. Look what I got.
Yeah. Yep.
You little fuck.
Yep.
I'm broke. 2 weeks ago, started asking me about option codes in Corvettes. I said, I don't know what the new ones are. I knew what mine were when I bought mine. In 13. So he's like, well, there's LZ, whatever, like a number. And I was like, Billy, I don't know. I said, not only that, the newer ones, I said, they've got all kinds of additional options that I couldn't get, cameras that, you record. I mean, to me, that's evidence. I don't know if I don't know if I'd be down with that. But he was calling me up, and then he said, hey, this is on Saturday. I think it was Saturday. And he goes, when your 427 blew up, how much oil pressure did it have?
Oh, boy.
And I said, what, before it blew up? or like when it was, what they said was okay? He's like, well, where was it and what happened? I said, well, when it went bad, it had 11, because they were insisting to me it was fine at 11. Knocking like a bit. No, it's fine. Mm-hmm. It's within GM specs. And I said, but I think mine, when the oil's at 200 or 190, it's I don't know, 30 pounds at idle, 28, something like that. If it gets if you're sitting in traffic or something and it goes up to 200 oil time or 220, it might be 27, 26.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's fine. I said, why? And then it hit me. Option codes. Now he's asking me about oil pressure. I said, what did you buy? Come on over and find out. So he bought a 2018 Z06, and I got to tell you, it's orange, and it's bad.
Yeah.
I love that orange.
I saw the picture.
Oh.
Nice. Yeah. I saw the ZR1 in that
That's
color.
what I saw it in.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course, they got that color now. It's exactly what I said when I saw it. And yeah, it's a nice car.
Yeah. It's
a middle option pack, and he got it for $72.
Doesn't sound bad.
No. I mean, for what that is, for 72.
It's nearly a supercar.
Sticker price was 92. So he got about off what I got on mine, like 20.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's the last year for him, so they're probably a little heavier on him. But I thought that was pretty good. Someplace in Maryland. Christwell, some shit.
Did you drive it?
Yeah. But the thing that I thought was weird is it has a break-in deal. You can't, it's in the computer. You can't drive it hard. The computer actually limited it. Like, he's like, I can't drive it hard. The computer won't let me. I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, until you get past 500 miles, you can't. And apparently that's like confirmed that, yes, that's what they do. Makes sense. If you got a new car and you want to make sure the guy doesn't, ruin it, got a computer that can do it.
I guess.
Yeah. So
I wonder why they limit it.
Well,
it's not to break in the engine.
Well, it's I'm sure what it is.
Maybe dealership, so the jerk-offs can't take it for a test drive and destroy it.
No, I don't think so, Dad.
Well, it happens with the Mustangs.
That's actually not bad. That's not bad thinking.
No, I know they don't want you to scatter it. If something's going wrong, they want to catch it, rather than have a box like mine. Like they were going to fix mine. Well, bring it in and we'll find out what's wrong. We'll fix it. I'm like, nope, not happening.
Yeah, that's what you want, a guy pulling pistons out of your car and bolting them back in.
Yeah, that's what he said to me. Well, it needs a crankshaft and it needs some pistons. I'm like, listen,
just
you can keep that fucking thing.
Just need a rod bolt clearance. That's all.
Well, that one didn't break. Mine didn't like window, but it was. Let's put it this way: when I was driving down the road to get home after that last pass on Route 78, it was knocking so bad it was embarrassing. Like people next to you had to hear it, and you're like, oh. But it didn't. And then when I pulled in the driveway, pushed the clutch and like to downshift, just shut off. Yeah. And then you go to start it, it barely started, barely got in the garage. But yeah, that was, but no, that's what he got, man. It's a beautiful color, but it's nice in person. Real nice.
What color's the interior?
I guess like a blackish, grayish kind of thing.
With orange accents or anything?
No, that's in the upper packages. But it is nice dashboard compared to mine.
What color are the brakes?
Red. Why would you orange with red? I don't know. What do I know? Not what I would have done. No. But he didn't order it. It was sitting there.
Oh.
So it is what it is. They had a ZR1 there for sale. This dealer apparently is getting a lot of them.
They had an 18 ZR1?
That's what he told me. He said that stupid ass fucking wing, but Billy is quite pleasant. he's a ball of joy.
That's actually funny because Hank's waiting on his and still doesn't have it. And they said they've only made 3 groups of 25.
Yeah, well, I think this guy in total, this dealership, if Billy has it right, this dealership is getting 40 something
CR1s.
Yeah. That's what Billy said. I'm sure. I mean, look, he might have it wrong, but he definitely saw it. He's like, did you ever see that fucking thing in person? How big and stupid that crazy about the wing.
That one wing is
so he
big.
Clearly was looking at one.
Yeah.
But he said the sticker on it was 140. So I guess could it be there and either not picked up?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't buying that. He didn't really want that.
Well, Hank ordered his. So.
All right.
I guess he ordered it the way he wanted it. Well, I guess that's the only way you can get those things, right?
Do they only come with that wing?
No.
All right, because that I mean, to me, that's like
the deal.
Right off the Fast and the Furious thing. That would be.
Wait, what color brakes?
Throw a NOS sticker on it.
Yep, NOS sticker and little special indicator on the dash for manifold bolt warning. Fuck that. Yeah, we're all adults here. So you had mentioned when I brought up the intercooler stuff.
Yep.
Water speed.
I did. Wasn't by accident. It was part of our pregame.
For the once that we actually talked about something.
I know. Oh, you were trying to sound like this is spontaneous?
Nah, not really. I don't really want to give that much effort.
I ruined it.
I had a conversation with a Circle Track customer, and I know that the drag guys probably don't think about this stuff because it's just not something you got to think about. But, with the conversations about drag week and people running hot and all this stuff, I think a couple times people said, well, you better be careful. You're going to overheat. You really got to be careful.
Yeah, pop the hood up,
And I always said that, look, I'm a Circle Track guy. I'll figure that out. It might take, 1 or 2 changes, but I mean, this is actually pretty simple. And so I got a call from a Circle Track guy that was a customer of mine for years that we did motors for. And he's running hot really hot. What'd you change? Nothing.
Of course not.
So, did you always run hot? No. What'd you change? Nothing.
Nothing.
It's like I jumped into a time machine.
Sure.
And I said, okay, let's start here. What do you got for a radiator cap? Because everybody does that. Every circle track guy, they got like an 8-pound cap or 8 to 12. I'm like, you're idiots. What do you got for a cap? I got 2. You got what?
2 caps.
Yeah, I got 2. And you know, this guy's a nice guy because his kid might actually listen. So I don't want to make him. I think Tad knows exactly who he is. He lived by you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the father.
Yeah.
So I said, how do you have 2 radiator caps? What do you got going on there? He's like, the radiator, the motor was high in the car and the radiator's low. And he's like, you know what I mean? So I wanted the highest point to be where the radiator cap was.
Like the Fords did.
And I said, okay. What did you change? Nothing. I just put a cap on the water neck. I said, okay, stop. A water pump makes pressure. I don't know how much. I mean, I would imagine that the pressure could come up dramatically. I really don't know. It's probably a question for a cup guy or somebody who really knows. But I do know the function of a mechanical water pump. And what's wrong with people that use a street electric water pump is they make no additional pressure. That's the problem. Yes, Tad, you pointed at me like you had a stroke of genius or a stroke.
I just watched one of the hot rod videos.
Yeah.
And they had the electric versus the mechanical pump.
Yes.
And there was a few, like 2, 3, maybe 4 horsepower difference. That was it. You know, even like trying like racing, you know, pulleys and stuff like that. And they said there's really the only thing they said would be good about it between rounds and shit like that. You just turn it on, you cool your engine off, but that's running. But they said otherwise on the street, there is no reason for it whatsoever.
Well, you know, and these are things that, again, I don't think most drag guys are like, look, I flipped the switch and turned my fucking water pump on. And that's the last they think about it. But when you're in a demanding environment, and like I'm sure Vince from Corvette Racing could tell you that probably the first time they, you know, shake down a new platform, all sorts of shit that they didn't think would become a problem became, and then you learn from experience. Well, with the circle track stuff, it teaches you that when you're running something and look, we raced on a 5/8 mile track. It was a big block that made, you know, 800 horsepower and it was floored almost the entire time.
How did you keep up with all the guys that made 950?
It was, well, you know, we have a little different 800 than their 950s. You know.
That was Brian driving.
So
anyway,
you know, you start to learn some stuff. And one of the things that happens that most drag guys would never think of is that inside the cylinder heads, there's hot spots. There are spots that get hotter than others.
That's why they call them hot spots.
Whether the casting is thin or the type of combustion that's going on, you got, who knows? Like probably a guy like Greg would be like, well, you know, when you think about the, you know, I can't can't get into that.
Yeah.
But there's probably a reason. Or one cylinder runs hotter.
Yeah. Water's not as close to the spark plug as
we know, conventional small block Chevys before we went to the newfangled stuff like the LS, 2 exhaust valves right next to each other.
Yep.
So there's a lot of reasons that you have hotter areas. Well, the way you stop something from boiling is with pressure. And anybody that's ever done like the grade school experiment of holding a match or something under a cup, when there's water in it, it doesn't burn through. It's fine. But as soon as that water starts to boil, well, then, you know, the cup's susceptible. Now, it's not so much about burning a hole in the head, but it's about introducing that aeration and that air into the cooling system. It boils, it makes pressure. The pressure opens a cap, it starts to bleed, but you're not bleeding because the coolant expanded, you're bleeding because there's air. So the guy put 2 caps on. The one cap is directly over the water neck. I give him credit, was a 20 to 32, which is what all, to me, circle track cars should have. And I guarantee you, the cup guys, I bet you those guys, they're not at the 20 to 32.
No.
I bet they're like 60.
Probably are.
That's probably why they have all that pressure. I mean, somebody could probably tell us that for sure. But now when you've got that water pump running.
I wonder if Mogul knows that.
I'm sure he does. Give him a few minutes. I'll call somebody. But when you've got that water pump running, when the cap is sitting on top of the water neck, the core of the radiator becomes a restriction.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got, let's say, a system that settles down at 30 pounds, and now you've got, let's say, 10 pounds of additional pressure from the water pump, what happens? Blows the cap open.
Yep.
But the cap's blowing open artificially. It's blowing open because there's pressure being made on it. So now when the motor relaxes, it won't pull water back in.
Nope.
Means simple stuff. So the second cap was on a radiator. That was more what I expected he would have, like a 22 to 24, something like that. And exactly what he said, it pushes water out and never takes it back in.
Listen, I know I'm stupid. I don't know anything about these race car things, but doesn't the low pressure cap defeat the purpose of the high pressure cap?
Yeah.
I mean,
I really can't understand why you'd have two caps and not be the same.
Is that not just common sense?
I kind of think it is, but this gets into, so this started the whole conversation about why you bleed air, how you get air out. There's tanks made by a guy who's local here, Arts Radiator, that they're tanks that sit on top of the thermostat housing. So you would think that the cap is right on top of the thermostat housing, but it's not. It's in a separate chamber. And over the time of us doing this, we got the first water pump we got for our small block, and it was from Howard Stewart. He said, I got exactly what you need. And he's like, but listen to me. How high are you going to turn this thing? I'm like, I don't know, 6,500, 7,000. Got to have one-to-one pulleys. Have to. Yeah, you sure? I'm positive. Got to have one-to-ones. Okay. Called it the pulley guy. Need one-to-ones. You can't do that. You're crazy. Yeah, you fucking idiot. You can't run that kind of. I'm like, look.
Hillbilly.
Yeah. Yeah, no. You guys and your drag racers always thinks faster is better. It's not. Like, had a fight with the guy.
Yeah.
You'll be calling me back. Well, short story, we never called the guy back, to get reduction pulleys. But talking to Howard back then, moving water through the system is the most important thing you have.
Sure.
I know that, and I guarantee you, I would bet you that if Mogul was on, if he's listening,
he is.
I'm going to say this, and he's going to be like, but no, that's not right. Look, if you put a restrictor in, for the most part, you're stupid. There's no reason to restrict water flow. There's not. It doesn't help. It doesn't do anything. I keep hearing from all these people, well, the water sits in the radiator longer. You know what else it does? Sits in the block longer.
And that's where it gets hot, no?
It's a closed system. The more exchanges you can make per minute, the better off you are.
Why are we picking on Mogul?
Yeah, because he reminds me he'd be one of those guys. Circle track guy. I'm sorry, Rich.
I think they did the same thing on that show with the electric and the mechanical, and they removed the thermostat. They put a restrictor in there. They did all the things to try to find, and it was all
well.
debunked. The
reason I started with the radiator cap on top of the water neck is that is the reason the restrictor came to be. This is my favorite thing. The big yellow one is the sun. This is how all this happened. Somebody was overheating. They put a restrictor in the hose and said, it fixed it. The water's going too fast. That's it. Circle track legend, etched in time. And it's always there. But that's not what happened.
And Moroso they sold different size restrictors.
Sure, because you sell stuff people want to buy.
That's right.
I mean, that's what happens.
So what happened?
You would have a cap on the top of the radiator. Back in the old days, you had top tank and bottom tank. So, if you look at any modern car modern cars don't have caps on radiators too much anymore. But if you look at one, the return is never on the same side. Same side as the cap. It's on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
That's because the core is the pressure point. Even with a thermostat, the core could probably still be the pressure point. So these people put a restrictor in because they had a top tank. The water came into the top tank and they had a cap on the top tank. So if you now put the pressure point away from the cores by figuring out what size restrictor you need, it didn't push the cap open. It doesn't mean you help the efficiency of the system. You just fixed the problem. That's all you did.
Got it.
And, this has been something, and you're going to hate this, but I have had many discussions with Alan about this principle of moving heat with water and And look, I know I can see you glaring at me like you're just waiting to fucking like
I am.
into him.
Let him up.
He is educated. You know, he did go to college. So he can't be a full-blown retard. Maybe 7/8. But with this, he does have some points.
I don't believe I'm not arguing, but go ahead.
Okay. It's in any kind of, I guess it'd be a system of thermodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're trying, the idea is to move the heat from one place to the other is essentially equalizing the heat on both sides.
Yeah, exchanging heat is the basis of what you're doing. Yep.
So the more exchanges per minute you can make, the better off you are. Like if you had a heater in your house, with the exception of going, well, actually this too slow argument holds water too. If you have a heater in your house, and I started to tell you about this today, and it burns 100,000 BTU of natural gas, it's an 80% furnace. So you've got 80,000 BTU. If you slow the circulation down so much that you overheat the furnace, well then, you know, obviously
you just overheated the furnace.
And you overheated the motor, the furnace,
Same
whatever
thing.
it is.
Right. Yeah.
If you turn it faster, it's going to try to equalize the temperature between the house and the furnace. But if you've only got 80,000 BTU to work with, you're never going to get the house so you're up to the temperature of the core. So you've got enough supply in your house's capacity. So when people want more cooling capacity, the only way to get that and to get water to sit in a radiator longer and cool more is a bigger radiator. That's really the only way. So then everything else short of putting a bigger radiator in is being more efficient. That's the only way that works. There's even people now that made restrictors that go in the lower hose. Does anybody know how a pump even works?
Yeah, it makes no sense at all.
I swear, look, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but a company that I know personally makes them. They're on their webpage.
Wow.
They send you one when you buy their pulleys. I have no idea why. You're asking for cavitation.
Restricting the inlet side of the pump.
Yes. And it's completely the opposite of everything you would ever possibly do.
Tad, your thoughts?
I was just thinking why, but
okay.
But however, my Ford does have the lower radiator cap and an upper bleeder over the two heads.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're supposed to open it up, fill it by
that's
that while it's running.
That's what I told this guy. I said, look, what did you take off that time you didn't change anything?
Yeah.
That when you were in the middle of not changing anything.
Yep.
What part did you take off that didn't get put back on? And he goes, well, I had a little plate that went on top that had a bleeder valve in it. I said, okay. And he happens to be a welder, a very good welder. And I said, no, I understand that you know some people that can weld and weld aluminum. Why don't you put a bushing in the radiator and run a number 4 line from that tank of the radiator, from the supply tank, like that would go back to the water pump, the place where your cap should be, where the 32-pound cap should be, and hook that line right in the top. Because then it's low pressure and high pressure, and it will just keep bleeding out the air, which is essentially what that guy's tanks do that sit right on top of the manifold.
And that should work.
Should work fine.
Yeah.
So, but that was, I think.
How much money did you make hearing that problem for him?
I don't know, but I happen to know exactly how long it took because the kid was quick to point out. He's like, well, that's 39 minutes of your life you'll never get back. And I said,
okay.
Yep.
So if you're going to charge him, I don't know, $300 an hour.
So look, I guess the moral of the story is, and like we talked quickly about GM. If you look at, I honestly haven't looked at my truck. I don't know. But if you looked at like an old, like say a station wagon, 1978 Caprice station wagon, gigantic lower pulley, giant.
Oh yeah.
And kind of like what we would consider like an average size water pump pulley.
To keep that big alternator revved up for all the accessories.
Well, they got to be close to 2 to 1, don't they?
Probably.
On a water pump?
Could be.
Yeah. You know, you ever look at the water pumps that they have different size pulleys on that too?
Certainly over 1 to 1.
For sure. So why would you go, I mean, in those cars, I would think, and again, it just could be me being stupid, but if you're driving one of those cars down the road, you could conceivably drive down the road at 80 or 85. They didn't overheat and blow up or anything, did they?
No.
They're popular for demolition derbies.
So
but anyway,
you know, those engineers at the OEs they're just a bunch of idiots. They do stuff for no reason.
make it fail safe.
So if they could turn it, if you were turning that thing, if it was 1.5 times engine speed and you were driving down the road at 3,000, I mean, think what that pump's turning. I mean, certainly you're telling me you can't turn it in a race car that hard by making it 1-to-1?
And don't forget they got the big 7-blade fan that looks like it came off an 18.
That's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother radiator discussion, and that's why I asked you about Griffin. Because I know from our fan shroud and everything on our mechanical fan, because the big block, the electric fan sounded great. Can't do it.
Yeah.
No, wouldn't work. The fan shroud and the radiator core, we actually went down in fan. We got a less aggressive fan because you know what we do? Cavitate it would stall. You'd rev the thing up and the air would stop. We put a manometer inside the fan shroud and looked at 0.
Great.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things here that people really misunderstand. So the overheating side of things, use your head, guys.
Mogul just put it up on the chat room there.
Can you read
theory.
it since I'm not looking at the chat room?
Not really.
I believe
it's called, is that Canot's fan theory?
The what?
Oh, no, I need glasses now, man.
See, Rich is an educated hillbilly.
And Tad is very useful.
Yes. Haven't you noticed?
I have.
I told you. So now, Alexa can start reading stuff.
So now you can't even read. Tad.
Go for it.
I'm going to let you read that and get your thoughts together. I'm going to talk to Mr. Banish.
Yeah,
He's
do
on
that.
the phone. Hello, Mr. Banish. How are you?
Hey, I heard you need a full-blown retard.
No, we got a couple of them.
Well, I mean, I'm sure if anybody, you understand this thing I've been told about called thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics is a different class. You guys are talking about heat transfer.
Okay. Well, then Alan is a retard because he said it's thermodynamics.
I knew it.
No.
I should have argued when I wanted to.
Too bad.
Suck, squish, bang, blow. Carnot cycle, that's inside the engine, is thermodynamics. You're talking about outside the engine, which is heat transfer. So you want conduction, convection, radiation.
Aha.
I'm betting on Banish over Alan.
I wouldn't take that bet. Listen, I am friends with Alan, but I wouldn't stick up for Alan when it came to Banish. Not a chance. So, was there anything flawed in what I was saying?
No, my comment that from my experience, both at the OE level and then having been a shop owner before, right? The thing I laugh at is when guys have cooling problems and they've got a fucking 160-degree thermostat in there. They're trying to keep this engine unreasonably cold, right? They basically want to keep it in the warm-up circuit all the time, and it doesn't really make a whole lot more power, right? Witness all the modern engines all run at 200 degrees, right? You know, LT1, LT4, anything new, right? Coyote, they all run like 200 degrees normal operating temperature. Because we've learned that the temperature helps evaporate the fuel and gives us a nice clean burn, right? Which is good for horsepower. And the other thing is that means the water coming out of the engine and into the radiator is a little bit hotter. And one of the things that makes heat transfer work is a difference in temperature between two different things. The bigger the delta T between one thing and another, the easier it is to transfer heat from one thing to the other thing, right? So if the water coming out of the engine is over 200 degrees versus, say, 165, it stands to reason that the air passing over the radiator at the same ambient temperature would pull more heat out of the hotter water than it would out of the water that's closer to its own temperature. Which means that radiator is more efficient at a higher delta T.
And wouldn't it just come up to, wouldn't it find its level point, its home point? Like, is certainly the efficiency. I know what you're saying. Like, as the temperature differentials there, it'll give off essentially or pull more heat out of the water. But if it was a system that was, let's say, a balanced system and it was always producing the same amount of heat and it always had the same amount of air, and without a thermostat, it would just find its home, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but what you'd also have is, just look at the radiator as its own control volume. Take the engine away. There's some heat generating thing, right, that puts hot water into a radiator, and water is allowed to come out of the radiator back towards that hot thing to cool it off every once in a while, right? Is the water coming out of the radiator at the same temperature as the ambient air cooling the radiator?
Gotcha.
That's a question, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. I know where you're going with it.
The radiator hose is still warmer than the air that was cooling it, right? We didn't get it all the way down to ambient because our radiator is not infinitely big.
Right.
Right? We're limited on our radiator capacity. So with that limited capacity, usually driven by package space and how much airflow we can shove through this thing, and low-speed racetracks are worse, right? Yeah, so if we go top speed racing, a lot of times we've got more airflow than we know what to do with. But low speed tracks are where we tend to overheat more. And so we can't get enough airflow over it. We can't change the temperature of the outside air. And in fact, at the OEM level, we have to make sure cars stay cool in Phoenix city traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to Phoenix in July and we test in traffic, right? Just to make sure that nothing stupid happens, right? And if we don't get enough airflow, then we kick on the fan to try and bring us there. But I mean, if you have 115 degree ambient, and you're trying to cool that engine down to 160, how effective is that radiator? That radiator doesn't pull as many joules of heat out of the water as we would like. If we had the water coming into the radiator up higher, up at like 200, we could pull more joules of energy out of that water in the form of cooling. And although the water going back to the engine might not be as cold as it was with a 160 stat, we're not trying to hold it at 160. We say, well, don't bother trying to hold it at this unrealistic 160. Let's hold it at 190 or 200 where we know we can actually be in control.
Yeah, sure. And I would imagine from the calibration perspective, you know, we had a conversation privately about like their origin points, like what parts of like what temperatures were the cars calibrated for, and you know, it made sense with standard, you know, STP. And I would imagine that, you know, coolant temperature has to factor into that, because like if you were in Arizona sitting in a stopped highway, I can imagine how hot the pavement could actually be and the ambient air around a thing.
Yep.
So you could never hold it at like 160.
Nope.
Never.
Oh yeah, pavement temps like 140 plus.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to hold it with only a 20 degree Fahrenheit delta across that radiator. Good luck.
Yeah, I guess there's no way to do that.
No, you couldn't.
If you have two things that are the same temperature, basically, how is one going to cool the other?
Right.
So you have to let something get a little bit hotter than the other thing if you want to have some heat transfer between the two of them, right?
Now, with all that being said, there is an argument to be made for a cooler engine charge side making more power. I mean, that's why.
But I've got other mechanisms to keep my charge cool. Like if I'm building a race car, I'm not going to be a dummy. Like first of all, I'm going to draw my air from the coldest place I can draw my air. So I don't want an open filter behind the radiator sucking into my supercharger or my turbo, right? I'll take a little tiny bit of pressure drop to get that ducted over to the fender well and draw cooler air from the fender well that's like 20, 30 degrees colder. In fact, that's not even enough. It might be 60 degrees colder in some cases.
And I got to stop you right there, because the other thing that all these circle track guys do, and I swear to God, it's the funniest thing. And I'm like, anybody that's ever sat, you know, in front of a dyno and watch what's really happened, you've got the radiator right in front of this motor. They've got a hood that just goes over it. And here's the air cleaner in the same cavity directly behind the mechanical fan, pulling the heat. You're taking 230 degree air and putting it into the engine.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of stupid.
Yeah, and you're going to call up an engine guy and say, you know, I got to have another, 10 horsepower. You idiot. Isolate the thing, and you probably picked up 50.
Yeah.
Ugh.
They're fun.
Well, and you're talking naturally aspirated small blocks. Now, play with the boosted modern engines, right? Where guys are trying to make 1,000 horsepower and they're running 20 pounds of boost on something, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much difference does it make to drop your actual charge temps going into the cylinder by 20 degrees Fahrenheit? That lets you put another 2-3 degrees of spark advance in, and at that level, you're talking like another 40, 50 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the spark change, not even the air density.
I guess nobody thinks about that stuff. They just
Yeah, I get, as a calibrator, I giggle every time I see somebody release a supercharger kit and they've got a cone air filter right on top of the exhaust manifold. You guys got to be kidding me.
And I've seen that in a lot of different things, including some turbo kits that are made, for cars.
Yep.
And I'm like, do they not worry about it because they just figure they're intercooling anyway? I mean, if you're
yeah, but all things being equal, wouldn't you like to dump less heat into that intercooler?
Sure. And wouldn't you want to make it easier to take colder, denser air into the supercharger or turbocharger? I would.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll actually be on a different area of the compressor map. It's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that all matters.
So what we have is we have circle track guys that, restrict water, slow water pumps down, and they don't have the basic stuff right. I mean, maybe how much pressure does GM expect, or any of the manufacturers expect to see head pressure, under RPM or driving down the road? Do they?
I don't look at that data usually, so
yeah.
I'm the wrong guy to ask. I know the guys who do that kind of work. The core engine guys do that in the dyno lab.
Mm-hmm.
So, when they're doing the first version of any engine, they're going to have specs for what that should be. And, it might not be the same for every engine we make. But, I mean, by the time it gets to the calibrator, coolant temp is kind of one number. We might have cylinder head temp. It's just which one are we basing the tables off of? And we're more worried about, kind of aligning our cold start, lost fuel and extra fuel amount to that temperature, just playing the angle on how much stuff does or doesn't evaporate on the way into the cylinder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know that, the only guy that I ever talked to, and this is, everybody's got their thing. When they make this part, everything is about this part. Everything, like you could be talking about, I don't know, push rods, and a guy that makes mufflers, like, yeah, but if your muffler's no good,
push rod useless.
Exactly how it works. Well, talking to Howard Stewart, which I have, and I know you have respect for the guy too. He said the pressure, built by the water pump is crucial to stop hotspots. So, and I'd love to talk to a cup guy or a cooling guy, because really that's something that kind of everybody overlooks. And clearly from listening to some of the drag week guys, you're like, oh, it's a problem. Well, if you had a better handle on it, you know how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
I think it'd be worth getting one of those guys on.
Okay.
Dale Hitchie asked a question.
It's no secret. Adding pressure keeps the fluid from boiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why we have any pressure at all, right? If we had no radiator cap and the thing was just at atmospheric, they'd always boil, right? But we can let cars run up to 220, 230, and it's not boiling; it's just warm,
mm-hmm.
right? And the nice thing is, if you can keep nice, consistent, even pressure on that fluid in the head where it's getting the most heat dumped into it from the engine, then locally it won't boil there either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Pressure is your answer to boiling, generally speaking, for engine hardware design.
Yep, I agree.
And then they're also all the passages in the head are intentionally very turbulent flow. So turbulence is very good for heat transfer. Right, so what we want in a water passage is almost the opposite of what we want in an intake port. Right? Intake ports, we want nice, smooth, massive volumes of flow, and with coolant passages, we want the fluid, which is water or glycol, to swirl around and every little molecule of water touch every single warm thing, which is metal, surrounding it, to try and pull heat away from that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to raise my hand when you were saying that. I know why.
Hey, Tad's got a question from a listener.
Yeah, Dale Hitchie wanted to know if you changed your on-off times with the fan in your tunes.
Based on temperature.
Yeah, based on temp. Sorry about that.
Well, I make them follow the thermostat. So my strategy when I'm calibrating a car is to always try and let the radiator and the thermostat win first. You can run the fan colder than the thermostat temperature by calibration, but what good are you going to do if the thermostat doesn't open? The thermostat's got to be in control first. So the way I look at it is I want the radiator doing as much as it can, and I don't want to waste energy from the alternator to drive a fan if the radiator is getting the job done. It's only when the radiator is not getting the job done that I need to increase the flow across the radiator. So the thermostat's stuck open. Let's say we've got a 192-degree thermostat. My fan temps might not even think about starting till well after 200 degrees, because I'm going to let that radiator try and just do its thing. And then when it can't, at like 205, I might kick on for the first phase, and then maybe 215 to 220 for the second phase. Right? It's not going to hurt this thing to run at 205. It's fine. So why bother running the fan yet? We're just wasting energy and wasting fuel.
So the answer,
once you get driving down the freeway, it doesn't matter, because by the time you're driving 40, 50 mile an hour, if you look at how many CFM that is across the radiator, it's ridiculous, right? There's no fan alive that can compete with that. So the fan's just along for the ride once you get above about 40, 45 mile an hour.
And, you know, the other thing is that if you picked up some power from dropping the temperature down a little bit, like, you know, pro stock guys, you know, they'll leave the line at 90, 80, you know, whatever they can. But that's not what we're doing.
No.
We're not racing to the thousandth. We don't. I mean, if it's especially most of what we're talking about is street cars and electronic injected stuff. Well, they like to see the consistency. They like to see things work in their range.
Prove to me that, you know, they'd have to be cooling the head before the block, and they'd have to prove to me that the colder head could accept enough timing to get me closer to MBT before I hit the knock limit. Right? It'd have to be so much extra cooling in the head that it moves the knock limit out of the way. And I generally don't see that, especially on a street car application.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, that if you went from 200 to 160, it's not a big enough change, if you could get to 160, to warrant doing it. It's not worth the aggravation.
Yeah, because you're not talking air charge temp, you're talking coolant temp.
Yep.
Right? And this is, you know, if you really want to get down to it, let's just not heat the air charge, because at wide open throttle, that air going into the cylinders is not exposed to that warm cylinder head for very long at all. It doesn't get a chance. Like, GM's got ACT, ECT bias tables, and they're a function of airflow. So at high airflow, they're very, very minimal numbers, because the air is not spending long enough in that intake port of the head to pick up any heat from the head. And this is another reason why I love plastic intake manifolds, right? They generally operate at a different temperature than the cylinder head, so you're not heating the air charge when it's in the plenum either, or in most of the runner. So plastic intakes are great for this, because they keep the temperature down, and that makes way more of a difference than trying to run, you know, a 20-degree colder thermostat, which is a false economy, because then you're just, you know, you're gonna drive around with your fans on all the time, and your radiator doesn't work as good. And then once that thermostat is stuck open because it can't maintain 160, now you're at 170, and the thermostat's at full flow all the time, right? Now your only cooling media is the radiator itself and how much airflow you can get across it. If that wasn't keeping up, you can get into the death spiral, where it can't keep up, but yet the water's got to come out of that radiator. It doesn't get to spend any time in the radiator with a closed thermostat, so it doesn't get to cool off as much, and it comes back warmer going into the engine than it would have if the thermostat was closed and blocked the flow for a little while and let it cool off in the radiator and get a cold slug coming back to the engine with more delta T between the coolant and the engine. So I've seen a lot of cars that were overheating with a 160. We go back and put a 180 in them, and they're fine.
And you would never think that. Like, the regular person would not think that. Like, how is that possible?
Well, I know,
but it makes sense.
I know that, like, some of the circle track guys, specifically like the alcohol guys, they can have all kinds of odd things happen with thermal changes in the system. Like the temperature becomes important to those guys. There are weird things that can happen, and certainly, like I said, there's reasons, like with the radiator cap, with the restrictor in the top. When there are reasons you would do the stuff that you do, but you need to know why you're doing it. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, you're going to make the wrong choice the next time.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to making horsepower, I'll put 10 times the effort into getting the air charge temp lower rather than the coolant temp.
Well, yeah, because that's what really matters in the end, is what's going on in the cylinder. Like, I'm still blown away.
Condenser, and, oh, by the way, I run more spark bleed, right? I'm knock limited.
And I'm
unless everybody's running C16.
Still to this day, and like people, you know, some people have asked me, like, what was the most interesting thing you learned on a podcast? And to me, to this day, was somebody told me, no. The reason that we can run more compression when you're direct injected is because we're spraying the fuel right into the cylinder and cooling everything, so we get more cooling effect. Yeah. And that was this guy. Yep. one of the coolest things I learned.
Yep.
Latent heat of vaporization.
Okay.
And a lot of big words.
Big words. So you're going to help Tom with his Chrysler, huh? Telling him what to do?
Well, he did already.
I already told him.
Yeah.
I told him buy a brand new.
That is what he said. That was actually funny. He said,
I got one in a Charger I'm driving right now. It's awesome. You want to hear it?
Yeah, we've been hearing it. It sounds awesome. I asked him about, should I put a turbo? Should I put a supercharger? He goes, we make these things with a 6.4 now. He says, you want a discount code? I finally had to tell him, hey, I'm building a house. I don't have any money anymore. But it was funny.
Yeah, I'm sorry your McMansion is keeping you out of the new truck market.
Yeah, it is. And then he goes and asks 2 other guys that he had to talk to about this deal. And they said the same thing. They're like, doesn't this idiot know that we make a Durango with a 6.4 in it?
Well, didn't they make a V8 one when?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I just wanted the V6.
So the car guy opted for the V6?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't pay for my gas. I have to.
I think that's another reason for a V8.
Yeah.
If you don't pay for your gas, Christ.
I'm a company guy.
Oh, God.
To be fair, that V6 is actually a pretty cool engine.
It really is.
It's modern. It makes like 300 horsepower, which,
yeah.
If we rewind the clock, there were lots of V8s that we were all big fans of that didn't make that much horsepower back in the day.
No doubt.
And it's not knock limited. That Pentastar V6 is actually quite fascinating from a combustion standpoint because going to premium fuel doesn't necessarily buy you a whole lot. That combustion system was already able to run basically MBT timing at watt. And so I played with another program along the way where they were looking at just, trying to do a power pack for it. And, hey, we'll warm it up with a cold air kit and a muffler and a tune. And we went through the whole thing and proved it was worth jack shit.
Really?
And we had the data to prove it. I mean, we couldn't find 2 horsepower reliably.
So they did a pretty good job on that particular package.
Oh, yeah, I think those guys did an awesome job on the base engine design and then on top of that, the calibration of it. But, I mean, it's basically not knock limited. So if you're already running MBT timing, how much more can you squeeze it? And we look at the airbox, there's no real pressure drop across that at those airflows. And the mufflers themselves aren't the cause of the back pressure. They're the catalyst. And we have to stay emissions legal, so we can't touch that. So there was no horsepower.
Wow.
And I made a very detailed report that said exactly that. I said, look, we tested this. We looked at these combos and, with all the data, and I had nice, fancy, multicolor plots, and I said, yeah, don't do it.
Did you have any pie charts?
Spend a dime on this program.
But did he try 2 radiator caps?
Did you have any pie charts in your presentation?
No, I'm a fan of the scatter plot in Excel.
Okay.
But let me ask you a question. If you're not knock limited, like if you didn't find an area where you could lean on the thing, why didn't you more compression? I mean, aren't you leaving something on the table then?
Well, so now you're getting...
Yeah, they were talking about a bolt-on power package.
Yeah.
They weren't talking about...
This was an aftermarket deal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They were...
And so they had the same disease as everybody in the aftermarket. Oh, cold air kit and a cat back and a tune.
Right.
Well...
Thinking it's going to be 30 horsepower.
OEMs know that. Yeah, I mean, that's assuming the guys at the OEM level were dumb. And guys, it's not 1989 anymore.
Did you try the intake tornado?
Everybody's got stories about those. I love it. One guy brought a car in that had one in the intake and one in the exhaust. I had my shop. And like after we picked ourselves up off the floor, he's like, "No, really, I think it works." I'm like, "Look, I'll give you a dyno run for free if you let me pull that shit out of your car and make it a follow-up run."
That might be the modern equivalent of the big yellow coil. Yeah. That really might be.
Probably is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny shit.
Especially when they say carb or fuel injected. It does the same.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear the Pentastar's a good piece anyway. That's good.
Yeah, no, it's a good engine. It's an awesome workhorse. And they've been good to us over the years. So, it's reliable transportation, great. And we said the other guys, there's a couple guys out there that have decent supercharger systems for it. So, I mean, if you want to lean on it that way, then by all means, knock yourself out.
That's what I'm going to do.
You're out of warranty, right?
Yep.
Yeah, well, shit, got nothing to lose.
Nope, I'm doing it. Mike's shaking his head. Mike's like straight up making fun of me right now.
Should have got a PPV okay. Tahoe. Stop fucking around.
PPV.
That's what I said, PPV.
Oh, okay.
Little marble mouth today. I've been talking all day.
Yeah.
My head hurts. My mouth hurts. I got a toothless that's going bad again. I got to hit the dentist.
So, Greg, you got anything cool happening soon?
Oh, well, I'm on my way over to Dave's place right now to finish video edit on the GM Gen 5 instructional video. We are all done with this thing finally. So that's going to drop soon. I keep saying soon, but no, really, we mean it, because it's going to be about 2 hours in length is what it's looking like right now. So it's going to be another big, long, sit down, get 3 bowls of popcorn type deal to go through it all. Probably have to stop and watch it across the span of a week, because you can't stand to listen to me talk for that long, but I get it.
Is to watch this, I mean, and I'm not trying to sell you more DVDs or Blu-rays, but are they better off with the prerequisite ones to get the first ones and watch through them so they have a basic understanding?
So, yeah, it always helps. I reference it, and I say in the intro, hey, look, if you saw the GM Beginner's Guide and the GM Advanced Guide, then some of this will look familiar. And we spent the front end of this video saying, here's the things that are absolutely carryover common. You already know this if you've been playing along. Right, so if you've been doing it right already, this stuff will look familiar. This thing over here looks almost the same, but we had to twist it to meet this. And then here are the things that are new. And that's what we did in the video.
Okay. And
so we tried to very clearly show, what was the same and what's new, to try and, give these guys the confidence to be able to do the tuning themselves. Right, because some of my customers are shop owners, and they've got 3 cars a day, and they've got 20 cars outside the shop that all need tuning. And I've got other guys who, I bought a 2018 Z06 and I want to fuck with it. Like, oh, okay.
Well, everybody should get those videos, because I've actually referred back to the second generation. And I never get the gens right. I guess it's Gen 4 computer for the LS stuff. Looked back a couple times as I was sitting there mulling something over my head, and I said, you know what? I got to go back and watch that. And I've actually been back to it a bunch of times. So there's a lot of good info there, and more than anything, it's accurate foundational info about how this stuff really works and why you do what you do. It's more than just telling you do this. It tells you why. Greg tells you why to do this. That's the important part.
Don't do it because Greg said so, though, right? We had this conversation before.
Yeah,
it's not because I said so. Here's the science.
Yep, absolutely.
So listeners, buy that shit.
Follow the process. We'll keep you out of trouble. But buy it. Yeah, DetroitTechnicalMedia.com. Dave will ship them right to you.
Do it.
Hey, while I got you guys though,
yep.
I hate to steer the conversation, but I made the post on your fan page a while ago about the guy, the diesel guys getting beat up a little bit for rolling coal and just the environmental thing. And I don't want to come off as a tree hugger, but
it's nothing wrong with being clean.
We as an industry better jerk our heads out of our backsides and start realizing that we're going to start getting attention. And it's attention that not everybody wants. There's so many guys out there like, oh, F the EPA, they can't do that, and we're not gonna, and they're not going to make us, and Trump's going to disband them, and yet EPA is still there. And there's guys doing obvious things that are, complete defeat device stuff on street-driven vehicles, right? And it baffles me that that's still a thing.
I want to point out that Tad has no catalytic converter on a Subaru. Just want to guilt you into that, buddy.
Heathen. Hey, on a serious note, Greg and I talked about this a little bit today, and I agree. I mean, it's definitely going that route, and we all are going to have to start looking at the way we do these things, and there's nothing wrong with doing it the right way and the cleanest way you can.
No, and I think in the earlier days of doing this stuff, you probably couldn't get equipment that was good enough, like probably catalytic converters and other stuff. You probably couldn't get stuff that was good enough to do what we were trying to do. Now,
today you can.
There's kind of no excuse for it. But the one thing that I do want to ask is, Greg might know this, the European people, do they use cats on those cars over there? Somebody told me that they don't have them.
What? Yeah, they got cats.
They have cats. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have an emission standard over there. It's slightly different test method than our test method.
Yes.
So the drive cycles are different for them. And, but they still, there's basically a gram per mile or gram per kilometer standard for the resulting tailpipe emissions on those cars in Europe. So, you don't get a free pass. Right?
Who told you there's no cats in Europe? Oh, God. Can you just stop?
That's why I asked, because I didn't know. I don't live in Europe.
Neither does he.
No, the thing they do, the thing they don't require in Europe is OBD2.
Yep.
Okay.
So some of our monitors don't have to run, but the tailpipe emissions still better be clean.
Yeah, I mean they got a sniffer, right, or something.
Well, I mean, let me ask the hard question here: is it possible to pass emissions without a cat, or no?
I don't see how you get it done.
I don't think so.
Not on modern standards. Not anything in 2018. I can't see how you get it done. If this was the 1992 standard, then maybe modern clean burning engine might squeak by.
If you run on methanol,
if you don't ruin it on cold start. Yeah, run ethanol. Because they didn't know to test for aldehydes back then. They do now, so they're looking for that also.
Well, on the rolling coal thing, is it okay if you just get a puff of smoke when you jump on a throttle? Is that okay?
Not according to the
not if you got
regulating bodies.
You got the particulate filters now.
Yeah, so diesels have a diesel particulate filter, and we've noticed that with direct injection, gasoline engines can do the same thing, right? We get little particles of fuel where we're so dense in the cylinder that they don't really evaporate and mix cleanly, that they make particulate. And so if you ever watch a DI car on the road, when they first tromp on it, you get a little black puff of smoke out of them, and that's now becoming a thing that we're being regulated on. So as a result, almost every vehicle going into Europe now, because the new Euro 6B standard says, there's a limit on particulate matter.
So just the pump shot is enough that bothers people. Wow.
Yeah, it's not the fact that it's a pump shot, because it's not the transient. Like, pump shot was there so you didn't go lean, like on a carburetor or early, port fuel system. But this is, you actually are stoichiometric by mass in the cylinder. It's just that your fuel was more concentrated in one area, and that concentrated area of fuel didn't get enough chance to fully mix with the oxygen all the way around the cylinder. And so those little kernels of fuel that burned rich created soot locally, not across the whole cylinder. And that goes out the exhaust valve. And if we don't catch it with something, you see it out the tailpipe.
So just enough.
Yeah, well, my 2000
now we're regulated on that.
My 2002 Excursion, smoke from the factory.
Yeah.
It did puff when you jump on a throttle, and that's enough to bother the bike. I really don't like the bike people. I know it's bad, but I don't like those people. Just belligerent.
Yeah, that's things non-inspection vehicles.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you make a mess. I mean, my thing, like, look, all these guys that, like, the thing that bothers me, and I agree with Greg, is when these guys do the things that they do to intentionally make them smoke. Like there were people that they put,
like the big rigs and stuff.
Yeah, they put coal rolling switches in that I guess basically like turned the boost off instantly, and the fuel stayed up, and just, that's a fucking mess.
It's like dancing in a clown suit with a machine gun outside the bank for 20 minutes before you go in and rob the place. Right? Anybody know
well done.
What to, and can you identify them? It's just so obviously flaunting law, and they're doing it just because they think it's cool. But the funny thing is, there's guys out there making diesel power that don't smoke.
Yeah, and you got all these guys here now that what I've seen is they have like what looks to be like a 12-inch or larger exhaust stack coming out of the center of their bed of their truck by their back window.
That's got stuck behind one with twin hexagonal stacks. This is why.
I mean, the part of the reason you get a truck is so you can put a piece of 4x plywood in the bed. And when you got these things sticking up, you can't do that anymore. I guess I'm too practical. Tom, you want to ask about that stratified?
Yeah. One of our listeners, real quick, wants to know. He said to ask you about stratified DI and how. I guess he's saying how to cal for it or not.
So at the OEM level, let me have this conversation first. Is when we talk stratified versus homogeneous are the two things that we would.
All right.
Yeah, this is a politically correct show, man. No need for any of that.
Yeah. We like all groups.
But let me explain that in plain English to everybody, right? Homogeneous means evenly mixed. So if I had 14.2 to 1 air fuel ratio, any little, every 1 cc of the chamber is at 14.2 to 1, right? From the corners to the middle, back to the other corners, right? Every part of the chamber is nice and evenly mixed. There's no shades of gray. It's all exactly, 1 air fuel ratio in the whole cylinder, right? That's homogeneous, and that means that generally the flame is going to be pretty consistent, going from the spark plug all the way out to quench. And in stratified, what it means is that there is a more concentrated area of fuel in one area of the cylinder, and then there is a leaner area in another. And we do this on purpose on some applications, or we have previously. And it improves, and Formula One does this, actually. This is how Mercedes got their really high thermal efficiency number, because the flame burns in the local rich area, and it's surrounded by a cushion of almost inert air on the outsides. And so it doesn't lose heat to the walls of the cylinder. All that heat turns into making pressure and pushing on the piston. So that's stratification, and they only fuel enough in the center to make the target torque. So BMW did this in Europe for a while. And so at part throttle, they would do kind of the diesel thing where you only put enough fuel in to make the torque you want to make. That's how diesels work. They're inherently lean, but they're rich around the plume coming out of the injector. And so they're doing basically the same thing on the gasoline DI engines. The problem with that is all those fringes where that nicely mixed center plume burns touches the lean, non-fueled outside areas. Now the ratio tails up lean, and the flame temp gets hotter, and it dissociates the nitrogen, and now you get oxides of nitrogen during the combustion process, and it blows the emissions right out of the water for oxides of nitrogen. So it doesn't work in the U.S. So BMW sold a stratified version of their engine in Europe and a homogeneous version of that same engine here in the U.S. because it would not meet our NOx standard here in the U.S.
Wow.
So it's basically not an option. It blows the standard, and we can't reduce it in the catalyst, and it's too much, and it didn't get us enough efficiency to worry about doing it. So
it's interesting to keep the heat off the walls and everything, though. That's kind of that's a neat principle.
So they actually look at how the chamber it takes in air, and they put the fuel exactly where it needs to be to have this inert pocket around it, or an inert cushion around it. Well,
they probably have diesel pistons.
Ideally, we're trying to do it so there's no cushion. It's that everything is evenly mixed. So the spray pattern or the targeting of DI injectors is absolutely critical, and it's application specific. So you really, from an emission standpoint, you can't just take injectors from one program and stick them in another car or another engine and hope that they work. With PFI, we get away with that all the time, right? We're like, oh, just go get the Ford Lightning injectors and throw them in your Mustang, right? And they work because they're all aimed at the back of the intake valve, and it all evaporates up in the port before it ever even gets into the cylinder. It's nice and evenly mixed. It's homogeneous when it comes in. With DI, you've got like these 6 independent plumes of fuel coming into the cylinder directly, and each one of those is targeted to try and not hit something else, which might be the wall, the piston, the valve, the cylinder head, or one of the other streams. We want to let every one of those streams of fuel evaporate out into a cloud of gasoline that evenly mixes with the incoming air charge and gets swept around the cylinder so that everything is nice and evenly mixed. So that injector is targeted very specifically for the injector position and the size of the chamber, and we play with rail pressure to control, because at higher rail pressure it will penetrate deeper into the cylinder, and we have to be careful not to hit the liner. So under some speed load conditions we can get away with it. Under others we have to run less pressure on purpose. So we play that game and all we're trying to do there is get a nice even mixture of air and fuel throughout that 3D space in the cylinder, including the fourth dimension of time, because it's all moving. So there's a lot of CFD work that happens at the OEM level to figure out what the injector targeting should look like on any DI program, which is why it's really tough to go buy DI replacement injectors for our high performance crowd. There's a couple companies out there selling them, and the first problem is they don't characterize their injectors, and so like right away it's like, well, screw you, I can't. You don't even know what your opening and closing delays are. I can't use your injector because I don't know how to translate on time to fuel mass and fuel mass to on time.
And
right?
doesn't that become even more important because you're dealing with a smaller window?
Yes, yeah, it's a quarter of the window basically of what it used to be, right?
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon to be, if you look at your scanner on your DI vehicle driving down the road, 1 millisecond is a pretty common pulse width to see.
Wow.
Right? That's 1 millisecond. That's it. So, small changes in the opening delay or closing delay can make all the difference in the world. And it can be the difference between opened and didn't open. In fact, I did some work with a client who had another set of injectors, and they gave me data, and they swore up and down, oh, this data's good, this data's good. I spent 2 days on the dyno banging my head against the wall, and it kept misfiring, and it just didn't want to idle, didn't want to start. And after 2 days of this nonsense, I'm like, look, guys, no. I'm like, it shouldn't be this bad. I know you got a bigger cam in this thing. I know it's supercharged, but something's broken. This is not right. I shouldn't be having this much trouble. Can we just put the LT4 injectors back in and call it a day? And come to find out, 8 hours later, the guy texted me. He's like, oh, yeah, we had the wrong offsets. Like, so you let me work for 2 days on the dyno with the wrong offset.
Yeah,
so 100% of everything I generated from there on out
junk
was garbage. Just junk. You wasted 2 days of my life and 2 days of the dyno owner's life, and the customer who owns the car, he's got $130,000 paperweight. Oh yeah, great.
Yeah, that's just uncalled for. It should go on his permanent record.
So
I think. Anyway,
it's a pretty strong lesson learned, and I'm working with clients on other stuff, with Gen 5 engines and DI, and my goal is all those programs moving forward need to pass emissions. Right? And not knowing your injector data, I don't think you have a rat's ass chance of getting it done.
Yeah, well, that's been the contention of a couple of the good injector companies for a while now, and that's absolutely true, no doubt. All right, hey, we got one more question, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up. A quick one. Guy wants to know: do you have any experience with the new the K-Tech high pressure pump?
I haven't used the K-Tech one yet. I have a couple questions. I need to go talk to Uwe, since he's across town from me here, and ask him. My big question is, typically so they're just adding, it looks like they're adding a second pump. So it's easy to see how with two pumps you could supply enough total pressure and flow to the rail to support big power numbers. That's great. My only question is, as a calibrator, what do I change to make that second pump work seamlessly alongside the first pump? In the DI video that Dave and I are producing right now, we covered what happens when you put a bigger cam lobe in with your existing LT1 or LT4 pump. We covered what happens when you put a bigger bore pump and, larger displacement pump in. It's actually not that difficult to fix, but now adding the second pump, I'm curious, do you just put in double the volume? And then typically they time the opening closing of the inlet valve to the high pressure pump to the angle that it's at. That's how they know how much fuel is trapped in it. And looking at the K-Tech one, it's driven by the serpentine drive. So I'm not sure if he's got another outside box or what they do about that angle, or are they just playing the duty cycle game to make sure that they are accurately controlling the volume going into and through that pump. If you look at how a DI pump works, they actually sometimes push a little bit of the volume back up into the feed side when you don't need the full volume of the pump. And I'm curious how they reconcile that. I have to talk to Uwe and find out what knob they turn to make that happen, or do they? Making it work at full bore or wide open is actually quite easy. I'm worried about what it does at 1500 RPM part load.
Well, maybe we will we'll circle back to that at a later date when when you get a chance to talk to them about it. You could give a response.
I assure you it will come up when I see him.
Okay, cool. Mike, anything else?
Yeah, one question.
Go.
Greg, remember we were talking about a thing that involved a big electric motor to get a calibration done? Remember? I don't want to say it on the air.
Pods?
No. It turned something. You know, it was a big electric motor, 100 horsepower electric motor, blah, blah, blah. And you said you could do that. And you were
motoring, to do negative torque and motoring on an engine?
No. All right, I'm going to have to call you later because I can't get this. I can't get this code word out. I was trying to transfer the information to you, but I don't think I get it to you.
Code. All right, well, you guys can get a room later.
He still didn't get that? No.
All right.
He'll figure it out.
All right.
He's driving.
I'm not sure where your head's at the moment. I don't know.
Well, it was a new service that you were thinking about possibly doing for people. So I wanted to see if you had thought about doing it or not doing it. But you know, I don't.
Oh, to test DI systems? Because you have to be able to drive the pump at high level.
I don't know.
Mike's got that
the, airflow. Oh, like an airflow bench.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I just didn't want to say it because you and I had talked about, you know, mapping a transfer function for a guy's air intake system, but you know, you need a big electric motor that you already had. You need a supercharger to pull the air through, and I just didn't know if you ever ended up doing that because I mean, there's probably people that would be willing to pay for that service. That's what I was just wondering.
Yeah, I know. I've done it before when I was at other companies. I had them built up, and I've done it. It's not hard to set the rig up. I just don't have that many hours in my day. So would I rather do that, or would I rather get the Gen 5 video done? And then I got guys begging me for, you know, hey, can we do a Coyote video? Can we do EcoBoost? Can we do, you know, Mega Squirt? You know, there's lots of guys that, you know, they need a very basic on how to get your Miata up and running with a plug-and-play Mega Squirt. And I'm like, well, that's easy, but, I mean, I guess we could do it. And I got to address the things that, you know, that people want, right?
Yep, I hear you.
I don't have people banging down my door for, hey, give me my MAF transfer function.
No, I just didn't know, like, if there was anything else, because I know you were, you know, we were talking about what you were up to, and if there was anything new you got into that I figured people should know about, I wanted to make sure you didn't forget. That's all.
If I hit the lottery and I quit my day job and I get my own building, then my building will end up having a flow bench just because I want one. But it's not worth it to me to do it today. I mean, I'd like to have it, but in priorities and life and whatnot, I don't have enough hours to get that done right now.
I hear you.
I clone myself.
Got it. All right. Well, listen, we appreciate your time as usual. You're an awesome guest.
Hey, no, thank you guys. I love hanging out with you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We'll
always learn something.
We'll think of more questions for you at a later date. I'm sure. All right, man. Well, listen.
Tell everyone go to DetroitTechnicalMedia.com and buy the videos there.
We
if you got an ATEC account,
we tell them all the time.
Highly endorsed.
Definitely.
Yep.
All right, I'll be in touch with you anyway.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
See you,
man. See you, dude.
All right.
You didn't have to talk about homogenes.
Yeah, I know. He
really
got off the rails a little bit there. I think he thought we were serious for a minute.
That's probably why he explained it.
Oh, he's a good dude.
But Mike, think about it though. Since everything's got to have emissions state to state across the board, but then our gas stations have that stupid little bellow on the gas pumps. You go to Connecticut, it's like old school, just a freaking pump that you put in, nothing. Why isn't it state to state? They all the same, you know, it's why are we
could argue about everything like that.
Yeah.
But you know, people will argue that, you know, California, they had that crazy standard, you know, the California standards. Like, everybody, remember getting parts for a car? Is the California one or?
Yeah.
And they only have 91 octane, not 93.
Yeah, but I mean, they had, you know, massive smog problems and everything else. Maybe you just got too many fucking people jammed in your fucking city.
In the valley. They're in the valley. Ooh.
Yeah.
Idiots.
Move somewhere else.
I don't think that bellows is for.
It is. It's for emission. It's a vapor deal. It is for a vapor deal.
So it doesn't splash you.
No, it's a vapor deal.
Come on. The bellow thing is supposed
No,
to
we're
be
not talking about the little flappy thing. It's the fucking schnozzle thing. You know, that fucking accordion looking thing?
To suck the whatever's blowing out of your tank.
Yeah.
When you're
and it fucks
gas.
mine up. Like I can't put fuel in the Tahoe. There's gas stations I can't go to.
Why, you could just pull it back with your fingers.
Yeah, but then you get all messy.
Yeah, and then I got to stand there and do it.
And you know, then he can't go to McDonald's because his hands smell like gas.
I don't.
What is wrong with you two people?
Well,
how do you put fuel in a gas can when you got to put gas in your snowblower?
The attendant does it, Tom. It's not legal for you to pump your own gas.
True.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on.
Forgot we're in
We
New
live
Jersey.
in New Jersey, dude.
Yep. My
It's
bad.
dangerous.
My bad. All right. I just want to point out one more thing before you hit the music.
Yes.
2 times you were on Fudd's side tonight, and both times you were wrong.
It was so funny.
I know.
When
You were just
who
looking.
said that?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I can't even do it to him. I couldn't even do it to him.
Oh, that's funny shit.
Well, I think it used to be that way. I think we got cats first. Not defending the challenge.
You're trying.
A little bit, but I think it.
I think it was like that because they had diesels and everything for so long. Now,
No, because when you got cars, you had to have them converted to U.S. Remember that?
Yeah.
So he's probably sort of right. All right, we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Yep.